Okay, and we can start with roll call.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Present.
Vice Chair Roman,
Present.
Board Member Pease,
Present.
Board Member Willis.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any agenda changes?
No changes.
And do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda?
I have no request to speak.
Okay, great, thank you. So let's move on to our first item. Oh, or do we want to do the schedule now or schedule now? Okay, sure.
Good morning. Amy French, Chief Planning Official. This first item is the meeting schedule. Just to note that our two members are absent today, planned absent. And we had decided earlier about the once per month meetings, the first meetings of the month. And this is at the chair's discretion, which our current chair has decided that this was appropriate. This authority is given by the Palo Alto Municipal Code, as noted. Wanted to just do briefly a note about the quarterly meetings. We don't have a schedule yet for those, looking towards July. And then I will maybe suggest that since we do have two items today, I have a discussion regarding an exploration that I'm doing to prepare a report to City Council to modify our ordinance for the composition of the HRB and the number of members. So I just wanted to share as I was preparing the CLG report, I was seeing what the CLG minimums are, which is 5 members with 2 professionals with a broader set of professions. Beyond the architecture, building design, and such. So we can come back to this later after these other items, but I wanted to let you know that I am working on an ordinance change. And because this is what our code currently says, 3 members, architects, landscape architects, building designers, other design professionals. So if we go down to 5, then I'm suggesting that 2 professionals who might be architects, but could be some other professions too. So, and then we'll have that composition with the folks that are remaining. And this would be kind of the proposed change, something along these lines. So if anyone wants to take a look at this later and give me feedback, I will of course be posting this on the web as a proposal that I'll be putting together for council probably in May. So that we can then have another recruitment to get an additional candidate. Okay, and with that, what's on our agenda today will be handled by Christina for the first items 2 and 3, and then we'll get to item 4 after that.
Amy, I just want to, on the schedule, you didn't have April 25th on there. Are we going
Correct.
to?
We are doing 1 meeting per month at the discretion of the chair and at the convenience of staff with all of our other workload. We are about to have a new historic planner start in May. So we're looking forward to doing some training and pulling ourselves into more bandwidth on staff to assist with, the quarterly meetings. And, the next chair can decide what, if the 1 meeting per month works. But that's what we're doing now.
Okay, so we are not meeting again until May.
Correct. That's why I show it this way. I cross out the second meeting of every month.
Right.
Those meetings, as we
April is missing. So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
all
we're
I was
not doing April.
clarifying.
Yeah. So after today, so the idea is that if there are subcommittees that want to work, such as a Mills Act subcommittee, for instance, that could be happening on the second meeting of the month date. So that's on their calendars. Okay, so I'll conclude now and turn it over to Christina.
Oh, one more. And will you just email us those ordinance changes that you proposed?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So do you want us to read the agenda description of this next item?
Yes,
Or do you-
please.
Good morning. My name is Christina. I'm an associate planner with the city of Palo Alto, and I'm helping Amy with the historic program with the city. So our first item is it's 411 Kipling Street. It was a request for a historic designation reclassification from a local historic resource category 4 to a category 2. Environmental assessment, not a project under California Environmental Quality Act and CEQA guidelines per section 21065. Zoning district CDCP, excuse me, downtown commercial with pedestrian shopping combining district. And I prepared the presentation to kind of go over a little bit about the project to give you a sense of what was proposed. Next. So 411 Kipling Street location, it's located in a commercial downtown with a pedestrian shopping combining district zone. And it provides a contrast to the larger commercial scale and the higher density of University Avenue. Next. A little bit about the chronology of how the building has changed. So the building was built in 1902. It was a 1-story, 1.5-story building constructed by George Mosher. Throughout the years until 1980s, late 1980s, building did not change much. Only a small addition at the front with the railing and stair was added, but the building remained mainly unchanged. Next. About the builder, George Wilbert Mosher, he was a prolific contractor and craftsman in the Palo Alto area. He built quite a few homes in the city, and on the right-hand side, you can see a couple of examples of square cottage homes. That was the main kind of example, and this is Kipling Street, for one Kipling Street is designed in a square cottage type that has stylistic elements of colonial revival and Queen Anne free classic style. Next. A little bit about the historic significance of the building. In 1985, it was surveyed for the historic resources inventory and put as a category 4 building. And per Palo Alto Municipal Code section 1649 that talks about historic preservation, category 4 building is described as a good example of architectural style that relates to the character and neighborhood in the scale and materials proposed or other factors. It's not on the National Register of Historic District Boundaries. In November 2023, Page and Turnbull, our historic consultants, prepared a historic resource evaluation. HRE was prepared directly for the city, but at the applicant's expense. And HRE found the subject property individually eligible for listing in the Palo Alto Historic Resources Inventory under Criterion 2, that stands for architecture, Criterion 5 for an important architect or building, and Criterion 6 for its elements of an architectural, attention to the architectural design and details. In February 2024, a major historic resource board review request by Mark Stearns on behalf of Hayes Group Architects was submitted. And they requested a reclassification of this building, Category 4 building, contributing building, to a Category 2 major building on the Palo Alto Historic Inventory. Staff concurs with findings of Page and Turnbull report and also supports the applicant and the owner of 411 Kipling Street in their request to reclassify the building from Category 4 to a Category 2 resource, a major building of regional importance on the Palo Alto Historic Building Inventory. Next one. HRB is requested to recommend approval, disapproval, or modification. HRB can also continue the reclassification request for further discussion or deny the reclassification request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does the applicant have a presentation?
A brief one, yes. Good morning. Yes, that'd be great. Yeah, share the presentation that I sent. Yeah, and I have both projects under the same PDF. Good morning, Chair Eagleston Silsowich, and board members. Pleasure to meet you again. My name is Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects, and I'll be making the presentation on behalf of my client, John Shank with Thwaites Brothers. Before I start, I'd like to thank Christina and Amy French for helping us with this application and the next one. I'm joined, I think, by Sammy with Page and Turnbull. Is she shown on? Okay, she is. All right. So Samantha Purnell with Page and Turnbull is available for questions if you have questions on her historic report. Great, you have the next slide up. So 411 Kipling was constructed as a residential rental in 1902 by George W. Mosher, a prolific contractor and craftsman who built many buildings in Palo Alto, like reportedly in the hundreds in Palo Alto's formative years. It represents a square cottage building type, which was common to Palo Alto's middle and working class families at the beginning of the 20th century. The immediate neighborhood is an early 20th century residential block where every building on that side of the street, with the exception of the former Apple building, is locally listed as a Category 2, 3, or 4 historic structure. From the Sanborn maps, 411 Kipling was the first structure. It appears to be erected on that specific property. Next slide. So 411 is decorated with stylistic elements of the colonial revival and Queen Anne free classic style, and other than modifications to the front stairs and the railing and a rear addition, the building has retained its original form. Next slide. The front porch with these Tuscan columns and wood siding, windows, doors, and the next slide will show the cornice frieze with the dental molding and wrapping 3 sides of the building. It's actually in quite nice condition. The next slide, it was designated as a Category 4 historic resource in 1985 and is listed in the Santa Clara County Built Environment Resource Directory as a status code 552, meaning locally significant. The city hired Page and Turnbull to prepare the historic evaluation, as Christina has said, which has concluded that the building is eligible for inclusion on the city's inventory as a Category 2 major historic resource. The Page and Turnbull report determines that the building meets qualifying criteria 2, which is representative of an architectural style important to the city, which is the square cottage. Criteria 5, prominent builder, Palo Alto's first contractor, actually, I think, G.W. Mosher, and prolific contractor. And criteria 6, which is a structure that contains elements of outstanding architectural design details and craftsmanship. And although not required for Palo Alto listing, the building does satisfy, according to Page and Turnbull, the concept of integrity. The concept of integrity is the ability for a property to convey its historic significance, right? And so they have found that it has integrity of location, setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. So we urge you to support our effort to memorialize and protect this Palo Alto building and support staff's recommendation to recommend to council that 411 Kipling be elevated to a Category 2 from its current Category 4 listing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this additional applicant? Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
this is John Shank.
Hi, sorry, to be real quick, part of the John Schenk with Thwaites Brothers. I just want to thank you guys. And as I was looking at the photos, I know the building very well, obviously. It pales in comparison to the University Art Building when we were here a couple weeks ago, and its grandeur of architecture and its importance there. But we're excited to process this and are focused on our other properties along Kipling. I think Kipling is one of the most unique streets we have in the downtown. It's narrow, has these multiple old homes in a way, right? They have multi-uses now, but we're excited to help preserve and make more significant to the community. And when I was sharing with some folks when the city was looking at the potential to redevelop the parking lot across the street, when people weren't really aware that, well, there's these historic buildings lining that need to be thought of in terms of the process. So we're excited to, as Ken said, see the property made more recognized, elevate its status, et cetera, and want to just thank you guys again. So that's it.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Have you thought about a historic district on Kipling?
I have. I don't know what it means, but I've thought it almost like, again, it pales in my mind to my eye to Ramona. But it's almost, as you point out, it's almost the whole block. It's each of these homes all the way down in their various states of categorization at this point. We're trying to get our 3 to be the same. But I've thought about it, so I don't know. Maybe I'll work with Ken and we'll try to figure out how to do that. Because I think there's that unique opportunity to name the block, if you will, and do something neat. So I'm encouraged now.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any public comments on this agenda item?
And no, I have no speaker cards or raised hands on Zoom.
Okay. So board discussion, questions? We're good?
Yeah, I think the only thing is that I think at some point we really need to look at bringing the rest of our inventory in line with what our current standards are. I mean, 40 years was a long time, and most of these buildings haven't been looked at in that long. So I think we need to keep in mind that that needs to be on our calendar somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so this request makes sense to me. I think, yeah, okay. So, yeah, do you want to make a motion? You want me to? Okay, either way.
Sure. I move that we elevate 411 Kipling from a Category 4 to a Category 2 major building of regional importance in the Palo Alto Historic Inventory, because it is a meritorious work of an important local builder, George W. Moser, and an outstanding exalted example of the square cottage house type within Palo Alto's urban core.
I second.
And just to clarify, we're recommending that council approve the category upgrade.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, thank you. So we have another request for a category upgrade. And so should we move on to the staff report for that one? Sounds good.
So yes, my name is Christina Poloskaite. I'm associate planner with the city, helping Amy French with the historic projects. The other project we have today is, it's a public hearing for 271 University Avenue. It's also a request for a historic designation reclassification from a local historic resource category 3 to a category 2. Environmental assessment, it's not a project under California Environmental Quality Act and CEQA guidelines per section 21065, zoning district CDC GFP, downtown commercial with ground floor and pedestrian shopping combining district. Next. So here on the left-hand side, you can see the location. It's located on the University Avenue in our commercial corridor, zoned as CDC, ground floor pedestrian commercial downtown with ground floor and pedestrian shopping combining district, 271 University Avenue. Next. A little bit about the building. It was built in 1930s when the construction was completed. There were some minor storefront window and door changes. A small sign was added at some point, and in 1980s, the primary facade was covered in vines. So on the right-hand side, you can see the image of the building the night it was opened to the public in 1930s. And as you will be able to see, the building retained majority and mainly kept all the detailing and windows unchanged, except the small change at the front with the front door, storefront door that was amended. Next. So on the right-hand side, you see the image from 1980s that shows ivy growing in the building, and ivy was covering all the detailing. In 1994, vines were removed, and a small awning change in 2015 happened. And since 2015, no other major alterations have been made to the building. A little bit about the architect. The architect was Carl Wernicke. It's a Bay Area architect of merit. In 1940s, he pursued courses in France, where he was probably inspired by the new Art Deco style, in which the building at 271 University is designed. Wernicke created a firm together with Miller. Miller was Oakland native, but he didn't have a formal architectural education. Next. So the building is designed in Art Deco style. It was the style first appeared in France before World War I, and grew internationally in the 1920s and 1930s. It combines rich, bold colors, geometric shapes, vertical lines, angles, and kind of represents luxury that could be achieved through decoration. And you can see a lot of detailing and zigzags on the building facade, and that's all original from 1930s. 271 University Avenue was surveyed in 1985 survey and placed on a local register as a Category 3 building. And Category 3 is described as a contributing building. That is a good example of local architecture and relates to the character of neighborhood in scale, materials, proportion, and other factors. It's not within a National Register Historic District boundaries. And the original DPR form is on the right-hand side. In November 2023, Page and Turnbull prepared a historic resource evaluation Our consultant historians found this property eligible. The report was prepared for the city at the applicant's expense. Historic resource evaluation found the subject property individually eligible for listing in the Palo Alto Historic Resources Inventory under criterion 2, that stands for architecture, criterion 5, important architect and/or building, and criterion 6, the structure contains elements demonstrating outstanding attention to architectural design, detail, materials, and craftsmanship. In February 2024, a major historic resource board review was requested by Mark Stearns on behalf of Hayes Group Architects. Applicant requested a reclassification of a one-story commercial building from a contributing building category 3 to a major building category 2 resource on the Palo Alto Historic Inventory. Staff agrees with findings of the Page and Turnbull report and also supports the owners in their request to reclassificate 271 University Avenue from category 3 to a category 2 resource, major building of regional importance on the Palo Alto Historic Buildings Inventory. HRB is requested to recommend approval, disapproval, or modification. HRB can also continue the reclassification request for further discussion or deny the reclassification request. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have an applicant presentation for this one?
Good morning again. Ken Hayes with Hayes Group Architects on behalf of John Schenk and Thwaites Brothers. I believe Ms. Purnell is still on from Page and Turnbull if you have any questions. And I want to thank staff again for helping us bring this application forward. Before I start, I want to express our support and John Schenk's support of 437 Kipling, which is a which is a project that is working its way through, I think, for affirmation as a category 2 historic resource. Ding-a-ling. Okay, so that was for the record. I've always loved, the next slide. Yeah, thank you. I've always loved this building. I really liked it when it was Machismo Mouse in the 1990s. It was this great little restaurant that you go to. And I remember when all that ivy covered the front. Anyway, 271, as staff has said, was designed by architect Carl Warnecke in this Art Deco, really cool zigzag modern style, and constructed in 1930 by George Peterson, originally as a clothing store. The history for the property says, I find this interesting, that Warnecke took on the project after Burge Clerk gave it a shot in the Spanish colonial style for the owner, Georgina Ostrander. I know what that's like. Sorry, next slide. Other than modifications to the recessed storefront and the removal of that commercial sign from the opening night, the building, the concrete facade really has retained its original ornamentation. Next slide. With this really cool zigzag cornice. Next slide. Kind of a detail there of the cornice and the window detail with these. It's hard to tell, but the pilasters are these sort of reeded pilasters on both sides of between each window and on the two sides of the building. And then the next slide shows just a detail of the facade medallion and the treatment above the window and the steel sash windows, which also are intact at the back of the building. I didn't include a picture of that. It's designated I guess next slide. Yeah, it's designated a category 3 local historic resource listed in California's Built Environment Resource Directory, again, as a status code 5, meaning locally significant. The city hired at our expense Page and Turnbull, and as staff has said, they've prepared the evaluation, which says that the building, in their opinion, is eligible for elevation to Category 2. Under criteria 2, representative of architectural style. Criteria 5, a prominent architect, Warnicki, and criteria 6, that it contains elements of outstanding architectural design details and craftsmanship and innovation, I think. And although not required for the Palo Alto listing, again, it has the concept of integrity intact, and I already said what that was all about last time. So we do urge you to support and memorialize this really rare Palo Alto building, and support staff's recommendation to council that they recommend elevating this to a Category 2 from a Category 3. And we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment on this item?
No, I have no request to speak.
Board questions and discussion?
Well, I have to say, it's one of my favorite buildings in town. It's just beautiful. I remember going by when the construction was happening in the 80s and begging for more of a restoration of the first floor, but I think it reads pretty well the way it is, and certainly more functional. I also want to thank you because not doing the research myself, I had recorded as a John Carl Warnicki building. And he was only 11, so that really didn't make any sense. But I think it is interesting to know the father-son connection, because certainly John Carl Warnicki is he's really an exalted architect. Also, I just want to comment that the inside of the building, even though it's not like what you consider original, there's so much of the original detailing. I really appreciate that you can walk in and get a feel for what it once was. It's really beautiful. Thank you. Oh, and I guess I got to say, I'm torn. I actually feel like this is bordering on a 1, but I think the first floor facade thing is somewhat of an impediment. So I'm going to hold.
Any additional comments?
I was just going to say that between last meeting, which we reviewed another category upgrade, and this meeting where we have different styles of kind of the Art Deco represented, and then we have the cottage Queen Anne elements, and last meeting we had kind of the Spanish revival or Spanish colonial revival. We just have such a wealth in Palo Alto of these different beautiful architectural styles. So thank you for taking care of these buildings and doing your part to elevate their status so that they will continue to be maintained.
Any additional comments? All right. Well, I'd like to move that the HRB recommends the elevation of 271 University Avenue to a Category 2 for consideration by council.
I second.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleton Chiselvich.
Yes,
Motion carries 4-0.
thank you.
I just want to also,
We look forward to it.
John and Ken, if you guys, I do, if either one of you, we're looking for another board member. So if either one of you have ideas, we would really appreciate it.
Yeah, should we take 5 minutes? 5-minute break? Okay. Okay, we're back. All right, so I think our next item is the work plan discussion. And is there a staff report on that?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. One moment. Seeing how sausage is made today. Okay, I think I'm sharing my screen. Let me get to the next item though. Okay. All right. So today we're here this item is to talk about both the work plan and the CLG annual report. The work plan we began discussing on March 28th, where we were reviewing accomplishments and talking about potential goals for the upcoming work plan. One thing that I have put into the report for today is, given our HRB membership and continuing members that are not leaving and some that are leaving before July 1st, my suggestion is to extend the current work plan timeframe to the end of June, which would allow us to accomplish one of the goals on the work plan that has been with us for some years, the Mills Act program. So to try to then tackle that in May and June and not have that appear on the next work plan. So, so what we talked about last time was these bullets here on the screen. And as I put in the report, so the draft plan for 2024-25 does have these all incorporated into 3 goals. One of the goals was the training of state historic building code. And I put that into goal 2 about promoting and improving communication. Again, I put goal 5 on there as the Taylor's Mills Act program, taking that to council. But if we extend the current work plan, we might be able to just accomplish that during this work plan year. So that's the thought I had. So, so I'm just going to go through the goals. So goal 1 is to modify Palo Alto Municipal Code 1649 historic preservation. We would need council direction and accommodation in our work plan. But as I said, we are getting another staff member to devote to the historic program. So it seems more possible to me this year. But just noting that because we are CLG, we do have to share any changes to the ordinance with the State Office of Historic Preservation as part of our duties prior to adoption. And then, so I had thought maybe this could start in July if we do bring this up with the council in April. April 22nd, of course, is the date we are going to the council with the nominations. So just mark your calendar. We'll probably want to have somebody from the HRB there attending to help staff in the presentation.
What time is that meeting?
It's in the evening. So they start at 5:30, I believe. Yeah.
Could you repeat the date?
April 22nd. I will be sending you this report that I was just tweaking today to add 437 Kipling. That will be coming out, I believe, either tonight or tomorrow on the webpage, and I can send you the link to that staff report. So I think it's 5:30. Well, I'll give you all the dates. I'll send it to the whole board, and then somebody can figure out who is able to come. I mean, you're all welcome to come, but we don't need everyone there to represent. So anyhow, I divert from the task at hand. So the thought was maybe there could be a brief discussion there about some of the things that we might want to do with that ordinance in the coming fiscal year, if they so seem in favor of that. Then let's see, these were the items that I threw into that work plan as possible clarifications, modifications would be to the nomination process, to what the effect is of HRB recommendations regarding exterior modifications, especially to homes. And then kind of one that's a bugaboo, which is what happens if somebody does kind of destroy an existing inventory resource. There's no clarity there in the code about what happens, right? Does it get downgraded? Does it get removed? I don't know. So anyhow, so these are, I put them as goal 1A, which is about the nominations. And we can come back to these if you want to discuss more in detail, but several clarifications. Goal 1B, again, to clarify for everybody who might be confused by the wording now, that these are suggestions when it comes to homes. Then we have the different situation when it's an ARB review, commercial project, or multi-family 3-unit projects. Then the goal 1C would be this category lowering or removal, having something in the ordinance about that. So that's goal 1. I can come back to these, but goal 2 is this communication promotion goal, which is trying to promote and improve communications, use videos on the webpage, links to videos to help, do it yourself, how-tos with the historic building code, et cetera. And then some kind of ongoing training program. So that's that. And then goal 3 would be additional incentives. So we started this conversation with the February meeting and some of the folks that had been nominated that were inclined to attend that and offer some ideas for incentives to add to the zoning code incentives for historic preservation. The idea would be to continue, take that and continue that effort to identify and brainstorm and propose additional incentives. There's many that I can think of off the top of my head too, but I'm not going to do that here. So we'll go back now, and if you'd like, and let me know if you want me to pull up any of these A, B, or C, or if 3 goals seem
I
good.
think on goal number 1, I would prefer we remove C, the removal or downgrading of the locally listed. I know we need to do it at some point, but it just seems to me there are other things that should be done, and maybe that one's not at the top of our list. I would prefer we go through the current inventory and start making little digs at upgrading it, because I think that it's great that Thwaites brought their properties forward to us, but I think that what it points out is that, our inventory is outdated to some extent, and we need to work on that.
Okay, so let's see. I think I had this under goal 1C would be a related activity, which is this conducting a survey of all the existing 1970s, 80s properties that are on our inventory.
Are there any 1970s, 1980s on our inventory? I
Okay,
thought it was after
not
that.
built then, identified then, and placed then on the inventory. That's when the original inventory survey was conducted in 1970s, 80s. So that's what I'm referring to.
Oh.
Yeah, still older buildings. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, I wasn't clear with that. So that, that's a great related activity that could be undertaken. I think there would be needing an HRB subcommittee and other resources, because, looking at the process we just went through, there might be outreach requirements and needs, and that does add a lot of time and expense to the effort. So, and then the preparations of forms, and we need a qualified consultant, and, this might go past the year of the work plan, and we'd need authorization to do that. I'm hopeful because we have a staff member coming, so we have more staff that could help, but I just don't, I don't know for sure that we have the resources at this moment.
Yeah, I understand that, but if we don't, we need to start lobbying council. So I think it's good to put it on the table in a big way, because it's overdue. Frankly, it's a little embarrassing. And I think that we have a technique in place right now, but maybe there is a more expeditious technique that we could use that would also be appropriate.
So if you would like, as a board, to consider modifying goal 1C instead of the category lowering, because somebody else on the board had mentioned this to me as a point of interest. But, 1C could become more along the lines of this related activity, reworded, et cetera.
Or just category changes?
Category changes, yes, because that would encompass that maybe some of these on the inventory have been demolished.
Yeah.
And the change would be to remove it.
I agree with reclassifying it as category changes. And then I also agree of the 3, maybe 4 goals, but looks like 3 most likely, of having this be goal number 1. I think the board knows I'm a huge fan of stack ranking, so we're going to try to do everything. But to Caroline's point, if we need to do it. It's the next thing. It's like, wow, this is what needs to be done now. That's what we need to focus on. So I'm in favor of it being goal 1. I'm in favor of the modifications we talked about. And then I have thoughts on ranking the goal 2 and 3 when we get there. But I agree. This is important.
So with goal 1C, it would be to conduct a survey of all the existing properties to determine the any category changes necessary.
So basically in plain language, just so I'm understanding, in plain language, we're going to look at everything that's currently on the inventory after, including those that are affirmed or confirmed in the April 22nd meeting right?
I don't think, because as we're so recently
They won't be
decided
on it.
by you, which,
Oh, yeah, we don't need to do those. Sorry.
so I
we
would
don't-
say the old ones from the 1970s and
Are more
80s
Okay,
timeframe of surveying. Yeah.
okay. So maybe we
and
do
that-
time box it.
Yeah, and that would be, upgrades, downgrades for consistency, and then also removals for anything that's no longer extant.
And Amy, I think it might be worth it to modify this report so it does say inventory properties. So, because I think it's very confusing when you say existing 70s and 80s properties.
Well, that's just the slide
Yeah,
I'll look at the plan itself, which is attached,
I'm
but
just saying it's through the report, but okay.
yeah, I hope that in the report it says category 1 and 2, but I need to change the work plan to say historic resource inventory properties prior to April 22nd, 2024, because, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so should we just do everything prior to when this board was seated? Or, I mean,
Right.
this acting with these members?
Well, I could say prior to the 2023 survey,
Okay,
right?
yeah. And then hopefully when we get closer to present date, we'll just be like, these are correct, and it
Yeah.
won't be as big of a lift.
So do I understand that it's not goal 1C, that should be goal 1A? Is that what we're doing? Did I understand that correctly? Or is it a 1C? Is okay?
I think 1C is fine.
Okay. Well, because I think it's really no longer part of the, because goal 1 in its totality is to modify chapter 1649. So as we're talking about it now, this is not a modification to 1649. This is more its own goal. So that's fine. We can have 4 goals. Just call this, goal 2 or 4.
Yeah, it could be its own goal.
Why don't we say goal 4 and
Okay.
replace, if you extend the current term to the end of June and we tackle Mills Act now, then we can have this as goal 4.
Okay.
And replace the Mills Act goal.
Okay.
That was a placeholder. Oops,
Anything else or moving on to goal 2?
going goal 2.
I'm sorry, does that reorder Mills Act or eliminate it?
Well, so the concept is that I proposed was if you, currently the work plan year that we're in, I think we said goes till the end of April, and here we are. If we simply extend that term of the work plan to the end of June with this current board as it is, and we tackle the Mills Act now, next, in May, June,
Okay.
then it can fall off for next year's work plan. And instead of that as goal 4, we can put this as goal 4 that we just talked about.
Okay.
Does that seem right? Okay.
Amy, do you have any sense of how big a commitment council might make to a Mills Act? I mean, is it going to affect more than 3 properties?
I don't have any sense for it. I only have the sense of what's happened in the past, which is never very supportive. So we'll just get our part done, get a report written, see what we can do. The council does take a break in July, but the work that we do here to prepare a report, finalize whatever the recommendations are and all of that.
Yeah, especially as we have the new historic planner coming on board in May, June.
May, and then we will have a new board, or at least some members are exiting for real. So, but it's nice to do it when we still have people that remember.
Yeah, we might even want to invite David back as a consultant on that one.
Guess that was to you. Okay. So
Is it appropriate to talk a little bit about the scope of what the Mills Act review might be now, or does that mean we wait for that?
Well, I would like to, we have one item for next meeting. It's a Palo Alto property and the naming of that property, the water tower well site name. So that's a kind of I think a fairly brief item. So we have room on that agenda to tackle Mills Act. If we're all game to do it, that's the plan, and we can talk through it a lot
Okay,
together.
great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And we're talking first meeting in May.
correct. We're only doing first meetings.
Just drill it in here.
okay, so goal 2.
So on the screen is goal 2. So I think this hopefully captures what was said at the last meeting about, the new ways of communicating using videos, for instance, to highlight how to utilize the historic building code for the state and other opportunities, videos. I'm happy to record lots of videos of me talking, the talking head that's maybe not going to be here for that much longer, say what to do, how to do things. But we do have our new historic planner coming as well. So we'll be a team, Christina and the new planner and myself, and we can brainstorm and come up with some innovative ways to get the word out.
So this is an important goal. I don't feel like it should be goal number 2 for this board. Our charter is, if I'm reading, like where it says about the commission at the top, is to identify, evaluate, register, and preserve historic properties. That is what we should be doing first and foremost. So I think goal number 1, updating, what we identified as possibly goal number 3 or 4, updating the inventory, incentives, I think is more important than communication promotion, getting those done. We have passed, which I know we rely on very heavily, and ideally maybe we wouldn't, but they do a pretty good job of communication and promotion, probably better than we do, because that's what they do. So a little bit controversial to deprioritize this, especially with everything we've just done with the community, but I think it would show a lot of attention to the process we just did to prioritize incentives versus necessarily the communication, as that's really what people have asked for.
I would be supportive of that too.
Can I get a clarification? So goal, well, first of all, aside from the order of things, because we can work on that a little bit, but so this goal being communication promotion, would you change it to be incentive, like, because right now work plan goal 3 is looking at adding additional preservation incentives. So I'm a
We're
little
just talking
confused
about
now.
reordering.
I think it's reordering. I think it's
Okay.
just listing the
Goal 4.
incentives as a higher priority than the communication.
Listing incentives,
Or no, sorry.
exploring new incentives, adding
No.
incentives.
So I think it's really just prioritizing what's currently goal 3 over what's currently goal 2.
Okay, so goal 3 is to look at adding incentives to our zoning code. Okay, so you would make that goal 2? Okay, does that seem?
I agree with that.
Okay.
However, I just want to separate the outreach from general public outreach to the specifics of what all the complaints about being confused and not being able to understand the particulars as they exist now or may exist in the future. That's a lot different than going and organizing tours and walks.
I
It's very
agree.
that I believe is specific to what we do as opposed to general outreach.
I
Yes, ma'am.
agree, but
But I'm agreeing with you in the change of order.
yeah.
And because one actually would help drive the other, I think a little bit.
I think so going back to goal 2, the actual words of it, Amy. I think the way it's written, promotion of / communication regarding historic preservation. Maybe I'm reading it incorrectly. Maybe I'm looking too much into it. That just says to me, that wording says to me what past is doing. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other words that we could use to make it more clear what we're trying to do, which is education.
So I should change that goal title, I guess, to education?
Well, I think it's education and I'll call it user support, when somebody is trying to figure it out, what's going on, providing them with easier and more.
Yeah, maybe instead of
quicker ways of
promotion, it's
learning.
education. So it's communication, education.
Maybe education and clear communication? Like, I don't know.
Or is it education and creating new resources? That's wordy, but I'm trying to think, because that's really what we're trying to do, is create resources to make it easier for people to understand the historic preservation code.
Well, I got to say, at Darlene Yapley's encouragement, I've been trying to do a chart of what incentives there are for which categories. And it is very hard for me to keep it in my head. I'm constantly back and forth. And I'm sure part of it is just where it appears and how it appears in the code. But I think that is a priority that we need to be able to say, if you're on the inventory, this is how it applies to you. Because giving them all that stuff is, maybe some people are really good at looking at it and just picking out what applies to them, but I don't think I think it should be easier than that.
Yeah, I think the trouble is, folks like Ken Hayes and others that are, do this kind of work and for the non-residential projects, it knows our codes in and out. The homeowner that only has one home that comes for the first time, everything's new and government is difficult to begin with, all of that. So yeah.
And we are somewhat constrained by the level of simplicity within the code itself, so like if the code has a variety of, different incentives, options, classifications, there is kind of a limit to how straightforward our presentation of that can be, because that's the code. So if it's kind of confusing there, it's confusing here. I don't know.
No, because I'm trying to do, these are incentives and these are the different types of zoning and how each incentive applies or doesn't apply to each type of zoning. But it's a slog for me. I'm
But
sure some 20-year-old could do it in like 5 minutes.
I think part of the complication as well is, the review process, which is hard to map out in a table because, is it subject to CEQA? Is it discretionary? Is it, is it an ADU? Is it so these types of projects and whether they're CEQA applicable complicates the process they have to go through, and whether the recommendations of the HRB or the historic staff who are trained in Secretary of Interior standards, whether those have to be followed or not. So there's a lot of layers of trying to explain, and that's why we always want people to come to talk to us, because we go through their particular property and what applies to them and what the process is.
And I think that's why we remove the word promote in goal 2 and replace it where applicable with education, because we're not, we can promote historic preservation, but that's not really the goal with this. It's to create user-friendly educational resources that people, if they've truly been all over the site, like they say they have, we'll find them and hopefully understand them.
So new user-friendly resources is what I'm writing down here. It's okay, it can be a long title.
Thank you.
Definitely needed.
And so then
So
finally,
that would be goal 1. Is that right? Education and creating user-friendly
No, I
resources,
think-
or is that goal 2?
that would become goal 3.
Oh, 3, okay.
Yeah.
I'm confused. Okay, so goal 1 is additional preservation incentives to the
No, I
zoning
thought
plan.
goal 1 was modifying the ordinance.
Yeah.
Oh, that's still goal 1? Okay, I
Yeah,
thought
that's still-
something went to the
that's
very
still
top.
Goal 1.
Okay,
Then goal 2 becomes the preservation incentives.
got it.
Goal 3 is the education.
Yeah.
bit.
Great.
Yeah,
And goal 4 is the survey of the
yes.
properties surveyed in the 1970s and 80s. Yeah.
Yes.
And yes to extending the current work plan term to the end of June to allow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion for that, or is it okay to?
I'm trying to read the room, but I think, if there's thumbs up and hot
Yeah.
head nods, then I'll take that as a yes.
Okay.
Well,
So I just want to clarify with Samantha that if we leave whatever we're now calling goal 2 as goal 2, does that satisfy your
Yeah.
concerns about moving it?
Well, and we moved it to 3.
I didn't hear that. Do we move it to 3?
I'm going to cite what it is. Goal 1, 1649 modifications. Goal 2, additional preservation incentives. Goal 3, education and creating new user-friendly resources. Goal 4, conducting a survey of all existing inventory properties prior to the April 22nd action, and not including those in the 2023 inventory update that we just went
I
through.
would advocate for possibly upgrading what is currently goal 4, which we popped out of goal 1, relooking at the 70s, 80s inventory from goal number 4 to somewhere in the top 30, personally. I don't know if there's thoughts on that.
I think the the incentives is going to be a longer conversation. So I think if that went to 4 and we talked about ordinance modifications, education is number 2, inventory review is number 3, and put the incentives down at 4, where we could take all what we've learned from 2 and 3 and put it in to the work on 4.
well, I'm open to all kinds of reordering here, but I also just want to express the thought, I think that talking about the incentives is actually the quickest path to doing something about the Mills Act. And I would rather not try to rewrite the multi drafts of the Mills Act. I think it would make more sense to present only the idea of the comparison of incentives between commercial and residential, and whatever suggestions we have for those to the council. So they can discuss this, and maybe somebody else can write the actual act.
So I would say the vehicle, so on April 22nd, there will be discussion. It's about nominations. However, there's an opportunity to relay the work plan that will have been adopted today that I will repackage and send out to say the Mills exit has been worked on. We've talked about other incentives. Those incentives to the zoning code require planning commission review, so those won't be coming to council, in the first quarter of the fiscal year because they would have to be agendized for planning commission first. We have to work on the zoning. We probably have to get authorization from council to do all that and put it in our work plan along with all the other zoning code amendments we have to do. So that's, to me, why putting that at 4 makes sense timeline wise. Not that we can't talk about the incentives that were brought up during our process we just went through and continue brainstorming and form a subcommittee that might talk with me at length once a month or more about how some of these incentives could be brought to the full board. But I think having that be put later in the process so that we can get our ducks in the row and get permission from council to use resources this way, beyond a subcommittee, I think makes sense.
Well,
Not that you couldn't form the
I
subcommittee.
have a great deal of confidence in your judgment on that. I would just point out that we've seen 3 things come through. I did not want to talk about this today, but my question was, how much do you think the transferable development rights had to do with these 3 properties downtown, all represented by the same professional, and which we all supported for obvious reasons? I have no problem with that. My issue is when it comes to the residential stuff, it's really lopsided. And I think there's a lot of deep thinking to be done there and a lot of explaining about what that is. And waiting on that puts a lot more buildings in this town at risk than anything downtown or that's commercial overall. And I would challenge anybody to push back on that logic. It is simply true. And I'm not so worried about downtown because there are a great deal of investment money and purpose and economic return there. I'm concerned about house after house with no preservation at all being torn down and replaced by a cookie cutter Mac Mansion or whatever they call them today. I'm not against that either, but I would just like some opportunity for the people that own those properties to find a way to consider preserving them in a fair way. So that's my polite.
So I think when we put a number to it, it doesn't mean the work can't start, right? So I think that's the key is if we put it as number 4, we have it on our radar to start asking for permission to throw resources at it. In the meantime, there could be a subcommittee that works with staff that talks through the things we already heard,
Well,
works on this table.
I understand the sensitivity in getting it on the work plans, but if we don't come up with something, some framework that has some credibility amongst us, I don't see any need for any staff work. I mean, I think this is a really important thing. So I'm just trying to emphasize it. So thank you. Oh, leave it where it is.
Do you want to take a vote on the priorities or I mean, I don't know that it's priorities. You don't even have to give a number to it, right? It can just be bullets.
My feeling would be I'm disinclined to vote on the ordering if, we can just kind of all agree that they're all on there and we're all going to be looking at all of them.
I'm happy
I
to
agree.
Okay.
denumber them completely and just have them appear in the order of appearance with bullets next to them.
I think
For reference purposes.
for reference purposes, I think it's nice to have a number. Just because, when you're talking about them, it's easier to say goal 1 than it is to.
And within, as noted, if you've seen the work plan, there are call outs for which quarter to begin this on. If it's a category 4, I could still say begin quarter 1 with such and such, like subcommittee meeting with staff on the table and, packaging of what we heard and, targeting some kind of study session and then, all of that. We can start with that on the lead up to getting permission to do more than that.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
So
And then
shall
the
we move on?
CLG report.
Yes. So the CLG report, again, we do this every year. It keeps us in good standing as a CLG, allows us to apply for grants, which are due every year if we want to. So in this period of time, it's always from the October of the 2 years ago to through this last September 2023 in this case. We had 13 meetings. We had 8 HRB members, 1 leaving, 1 coming to replace. And then we had the trainings. People have let me know. I think I'm still missing 1 member's training. And then how many properties were found taken off the potentially eligible list that we had from the 1998 survey and found by professional evaluation to be either eligible or ineligible for the California Register during that period. So I'll get that list and attach that. There's a bunch of attachments that I send to the Office of Historic Preservation along with the report. So the report, I believe I included it in the packet page 140, 139 is where it starts. So it's a form. I provide links to all the packets for the year. Again, Office of Historic Preservation is a resource for us. And again, when we get to a point of recommending changes to our historic ordinance, I would send them a draft and they would give us their comments or what have you before we take it to the next step. So if you see, I always go through all the agendas and see who actually attended, and you'll see the boxes checked where you did attend meetings, et cetera. And you'll see your trainings. If I got it wrong or you forgot to tell me, so on packet page 144 to 145, I have the trainings noted. So if you see something there that's not correct, or you have another training you want to tell me about, I'm even putting the ones from 2024 on there. So.
Actually, under my trainings, all of them were California Association of Museums Annual Conference. So it's the same for all of them.
You sent me something about the Palo Alto Art Center.
So the Palo Alto Art Center was a moderator for one of the panel discussions, but it was all through the annual conference.
Great, thank you. I'll make that adjustment.
And then I also did the Secretary of the Interior Standards boot camp that I think it was California Preservation Foundation put on, the one that Caroline did.
Oh, in February, was it?
Yeah, like right after I started. No.
I thought you did a different one.
Oh, was that a different
You sent
one?
me a link.
Is that the recent one?
Yeah, there was a recent one,
Diving deeper or whatever it was.
and it was like a multi-part one.
Right.
But that was counts for this year. No.
Oh, this is last year. I'm sorry.
Well, last year's what we want. So
But she's talking about this.
I'm talking about. I
oh,
did
that's
it in
fine. I'm
20
putting everything in.
Okay.
I put it. So if you can remember the date and the title and the number of hours.
Okay.
And who put it on. You say it's CPF, I'll remember that.
Yeah, I'll email you. And then should I, this is kind of silly, but should I just put all my courses from my degree?
You're welcome to. I can attach it.
I don't like there being a TBD there. So I'm like, I did stuff.
I figured I just didn't.
I know.
I figured you probably have more than 1 hour, but
Many hours.
yeah.
Okay, I'll get with you.
Thanks.
So Amy, on page 142, when you have membership, I'm just wondering, because there was someplace else where they said professional qualifications. I'm just wondering after my name and Go's name, if you just put comma architect. I assume she is a registered architect, right?
I don't know. Are you talking about Margaret? Oh,
Margaret's not an architect.
yeah.
a
Okay. So
licensed
on page
architect.
one, packet page 142,
Yeah,
it talks about membership and it says architecture for you and it says architecture for
right.
GoGo.
But I just thought because I am actually a registered architect in California.
see. So instead of saying architecture, say architect.
I would say comma.
Architect.
Well, okay, I would use my first initial, which is how I use my name professionally, H. Caroline Willis. And then I would put comma architect as my name. And I
Oh,
would do the same with GoGo, although I would probably use her, whatever name she's licensed under. I mean, people tend to use AIA, but because it was so sexist when I was a child, I have avoided it.
Oh, so I don't know what her, I wouldn't say pen name, but what's her architect name? I don't know.
Yeah,
She
I
goes
don't-
by GoGo as far as I know, but I don't know what
Right.
her,
But I'm assuming that's not what her license says.
well, okay, I'll reach out to her.
There was some place where it said, explain professional. I guess it depends on how you define professional.
Well, in our code currently, not the but this is the CLG report. So professional in their eyes is a very wide range of professionals. In our code, it's only cited as architecture, landscape architecture, building designer, or other design professional. So we have, yeah. Okay, so architecture, comma, architect, and then your
No,
architect name.
I
architect.
meant comma architect after the names.
Oh, okay.
Not architecture, comma architect.
Okay. Thanks. I'm slow.
Okay. Anything else on this one? Okay. And are there any additional board business or announcements?
No, just the big announcement about April 22nd, which I, again, will forward you once that is
Okay.
published.
All right. Thank you. Anything else?
I do. If you guys haven't looked at the Palo Alto tours, Past is doing tours again. Actually, there's one in April, but no, I guess it's the month of May and the first Saturday in June. So I would encourage, if you haven't been on these tours before, I would encourage you to go. So the ones I don't have May 5th because it's my anniversary, 45th. So I'm not around, but one is Stanford's Palo Alto, which I think on the 11th sounds good, and Upper College Terrace on the 18th. University Avenue on May 25th, which I think I'd like to hit up. And June 1st is Green Meadow. So I think, we should at least hear what the public knows, yeah, and keep up to date.
Oh, Board Member Willis, where are those? Are those on a web page? Did you say past?
Yeah.
Past website. Okay. And we do have a link to the past webpage, so people can find it through our website too. Thanks.
All right. If there's nothing else, I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thanks.